Today we're going to talk about starting seeds. So today we're going to be starting our seeds for the first time this year. I was planning to do it directly after the new moon in January, but I'm a little late. We had a little hiccup there, so I'm a tiny bit late, but it's still really early. As you can see, it's snowing. We're in Canada, so January in Canada tends to have weather like this. It's a little chilly. I've got a couple layers on, but it's not too bad, and it's actually beautiful. British Columbia is still pretty warm for the winter, so here we are in the garage. I'm facing outside of the garage so you can see the driveway and whatever, and not have too much clutter. But today we're going to start some seedlings on some 72 trays. I do have 128s. I can't find them right now, but I tend to stick with these ones. These are my favorite size for cells and size for just having the tray, everything. So it's a nice tray to get the seedlings out of easily. On the bottom you can see there's holes, and you can easily put a little stick in there to pop them out, or you can soak it, get it wet. They come out sometimes even from the stem, pulling on the stem. But today we're going to show you right from the start how we start the seeds and get them growing and get your seedlings off to a really healthy start. And we have some seeding mix here. So a lot of people ask me this question: what do you start your seeds in? The answer is a seed starting mix. There's many different varieties on the market. You can even make your own, but I would suggest, especially for the beginning, going out and buying just a seed starting mix. You can ask at your local nursery, you can go to Home Depot, you can go many places and find a seed starting mix. The difference is there's vermiculite in there, and it helps to retain some moisture. Mix number 4 is from Home Depot or from wherever. Sunshine Mix number 4 is the one I generally use. It's so early in the year that I can't even find that yet, so I just got a random one here, and we'll show you how you load these up. It's really easy, but there are some tricks to doing it so that you're off to a really good start and have really healthy seedlings right out the gate. And you might wonder, why do you need healthy seedlings when it's just a baby plant and it's not a big deal? The healthier your seedlings are right from the get-go, right from the beginning, is going to determine the health of your plant throughout its life cycle. So if you want an amazing harvest, if you want a plant that's resistant to disease, resistant to pests, it all begins with your starting mix and your seed and how you begin that germination process. So I'll show you right now. This is how I do it, and it's not my techniques alone. It's from my mentors. My main mentor has been Jean-Martin Fortier from the Market Gardener. He wrote an amazing book on starting seeds, on farming. I really suggest you Google him and check out his book and check out his workshops and everything. He's amazing. But that's where I learned my techniques from. So you're going to get dirty. I wouldn't suggest doing this on your kitchen table or on your kitchen island or in your living room or anywhere indoors. I would suggest doing this outside. It's a little chilly right now. Hopefully you have an indoor space, maybe a shed or a greenhouse or a solarium or somewhere outdoors, but you're going to make a mess, and that's just par for the course. So here we go. You just grab your soil, and it helps to have gloves to keep your hands warm, so you're not worried also about getting slivers or dirt under your nails. If you're worried about that, I'm not worried about that, but I generally keep my nails pretty short all the time since I started farming, because I'm just always going to get dirt. Dirty hands. So the idea is to get moisture in contact with the seeds. Seeds don't have roots. Seeds just have only themselves and water and osmosis to bring the water in. They can't suck it up with roots. So what you're trying to do is surround that seed with darkness and liquid water and some nice cozy seed starting mix. You don't want to go with compost. You don't want to go with soil from your garden. You don't want to go with sand. You don't want to go with any even potting soil. The best thing for starting your seeds is a nice seed starting mix, and it has these little balls of vermiculite in it that help keep the moisture, because you want the optimal moisture for your seedlings. You don't want them to dry out. Dry seedlings are a recipe for dead seedlings. So I'm just going to put it on there. And you want to get every single cell filled, but it's really fluffy. So what we're going to do is we're going to pack it down. And don't be afraid to pack this down pretty tight. You don't have to use a ton of muscle or anything, but don't be afraid to pack it tight. I'm just trying to get it all, every single cell filled. You want maximum germination, so you want every cell to count. So there we go. Making a mess here, but that's why we're outside. There we go. So then we have quite a few of these trays. So I'm just going to take the exact identical tray. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see the table here? So we have the starting mix in each cell, and we're just going to put this one right on top, so over each cell. And we're going to give it a squish, and squish that seed starting mix right down into each cell. And I'll tell you the reason why in a second. So now we have compacted the seed starting mix a little bit, and there's a little indentation. And if you're doing larger seeds like peas, I'm going to do some peas right now. If you're doing larger seeds, that's enough. If you're doing a really small seed, you could put another layer on and pack it down even more. And that way you know you have enough room, but not your seed doesn't get lost in there. So that's good enough for peas. Generally what I would do is wet this, put the seeds in, and then put the dry mixture on top. So now we have our substrate in the cells here, and we've put it down. We've pushed it all down so it's nice and compacted. And we're going to give it some water, and then we'll put our seeds in. So don't be afraid to get it very, very wet at this point. There's nothing in there. There's no seeds in there yet to splash around, so you can just soak it through really nicely. And this substrate will, usually depending on the seeding mix, is a little bit different. This one's holding the water almost too well. But usually you can get it pretty wet and it's just great, just fine. This one's holding it very, very well. Like flooded it, but anyway. So now we have our tray nice and soaking wet. We've packed down the soil before we wet it, and then we put the water on. Now we're going to put our seeds in. So today we're starting with sweet pea Spencer Giant Mixture Jumbo. So we're going to try this out. These are the seeds here. They are not edible. Don't ever try to eat sweet peas, the pods from sweet peas. They are not an eating pea. They're actually toxic to animals, and to humans they'll probably give you a stomachache. So they are tinier than regular peas, so they're not going to be very nourishing anyway. But we've got it on a stick, so always try to keep your seed dry, especially if you're putting seed back into your storage container. Don't have your gloves on and get it all muddy and wet and then try to put your seed back. That's just a recipe for mold and rot. So then always mark your trays. So this whole tray is going to be the same thing. So we marked a little stick here with what we're planting. So I'm just going to put that in the corner there. You can put it anywhere you want as long as it tells you that the whole tray is the same thing. Say if you did one row, one seed, and another row, another seed, you're going to want to mark that row so that you're telling yourself, you're leaving yourself little notes of which seed is where. Because trust me, you're not going to remember. So this whole tray is going to be sweet peas, and we're just going to put one in each cell. You can try to get it in the middle, but if you try to be too perfect with that, you're going to slow yourself down, you're going to get frustrated, so just drop them in the cell. It's not going to be perfect, but you also want to go at a decent pace, so put all your seeds in there. And then the reason why we like to do the wet on the bottom and then the top is dry is just easy. It's easier that way. So you don't have to deal with both being all fluffy, and then when you put the water on it moves the seed around. If it's wet on the bottom and then you sprinkle the fluffy stuff, light dry stuff on top, it's way easier, and then you can just water it all in at the end. So once again, seeds need to use osmosis to move the liquid into themselves, and they need to that's part of the germination process, is to swell with water. And that actually happens right before they're about to pop, right before they're about to germinate. They take up water. And so in order to do that, you have to facilitate that by bringing the water to them. They're not going to go and they don't have roots. There's no other way for them to get water other than you giving it to them. So you have to make sure these are watered perfectly and stay watered the whole time they're trying to germinate. You don't want them to dry out. You don't want to even direct seed on your farm and then forget to water it, which I've done, believe it or not, I've done it many times. So there we go. We've got pretty much one per cell there. Put this back. So now we've got the seeds all in. Now we're gonna take your dry substrate and we're just gonna sprinkle it lightly on top. And the general rule of thumb, everyone's like, oh, how deep should I plant this and how deep should I plant that? If you just want to know how to do any seed, for the most part, you're just double the size of the seed. And for the larger seeds, you can go a little extra. For the teeny tiny seeds, it's just a sprinkle. The main thing you're trying to do is give the seed some darkness so it can do its thing. And if you try to sprinkle these tiny little seeds and not cover them, they're not going to germinate. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to germinate. So better to go a little bit, tiny bit overboard, not crazy overboard, because then you're going to have a slow germination process. It's going to have to push up all that extra dirt. But if you just give it a little sprinkle, these are pretty big seeds compared to like herb seeds. So you can give it a little bit extra. This is really fluffy stuff too. It's really lightweight. So you just want to sprinkle it on top and then we'll water it in and call it a day. So now we've put the other layer of substrate on just really carefully, and then we're going to give it some more water. And you shouldn't have to water this every day. Just check your tray every day and make sure that it's watered enough. And put it somewhere warm, especially in January. Put the tray somewhere warm. If you want to put it under lights, grow lights, that's great too. A heating mat underneath, depending on the type of seed you're doing. Peppers, that's a great idea. Eggplant, tomatoes even, that's a great idea. You can keep it in the darkness for a little while, but eventually, probably sooner than you're going to think, it's going to need light, and grow lights are a great option. That's what I'm planning to do, is have these trays under grow lights. You can get LEDs, so they're not super high on your electricity bill. Then let's do another variety of herbs. Okay, now we're going to try some teeny tiny tarragon seeds. These are Russian tarragon. So, with tiny seeds, you have to be extra careful to get the right amount in each cell. And you can go with a smaller cell. Just remember that when they come up, when they're sprouted up and they're ready to transplant into your garden or into other pots, they're going to be harder to get out of the cells. So I generally keep coming back to the 72 trays. The other trick too is, just gonna put this on for a sec. The other trick too is when you're getting these trays apart, they really like to stick together. They don't want to separate. So if you store them like the next year, I use mine year in year out. Some people sterilize theirs, whatever. If you're stacking them in the winter for storage purposes, don't stack them like this. It's a pain in the neck to try to get them apart. Stack them like this or like this, and you can insert them, and that's fine. There's still going to be a hassle to get apart, but if you stack them really tightly, like one on top of the other like that, they're such a pain in the neck. So that's just a little trick from someone who's done it a lot. So let's get these seeds in. So here are the seeds. My hands are so cold and wet, but I'll show you. The seeds are really tiny. It's almost like fine dust. Is that close enough? So we're going to try with bare hands, bare fingers to get just the tiny amount. If you get more than one in each cell, that's not the end of the world. Move that out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. We're going to try to put a minimal amount in each cell. And once again, we have our stick saying Russian tarragon, and we're going to make the whole tray. Tarragon's pretty much, other than maybe basil, tarragon's my favorite herb, so I'd like the whole tray of this. And we're going to do the whole tray the same, so we're going to put our tag there. Once again, it's really important for tags, and I wouldn't bother even trying to put these in the garden. So if you're going to transplant into the garden, have these ones. I've been leaning toward doing stakes like that in the garden and just riding on those with nice big Sharpie or something that isn't going to weather as easily, and putting this in the garden as opposed to these. I put these in the garden some years and you just never find them again. They wash off, they get broken, they get lost. So try to always mark your stuff really well and know what you've planted, because you'll want to know for seed saving, for selling purposes, for every purpose. You're going to want to know what you've grown. And you're going to want to know because you're going to want to know if you should grow it the next year. So just put a tiny bit, and you're not even going to see. So have a method. Go in order as you sprinkle these seeds in, because you're not going to be able to see if there's seeds in each cell. Unless if you get distracted or someone rings the phone and you walk away, you're not going to be able to find your spot again. So try to do the whole tray at once. Don't do half a tray and then come back. The seed is so tiny. So if you're wondering, the action I'm using is just this. It's just like I put a pinch of seed in my finger, and then I just roll my finger ever so slightly over each cell, and that drops 5 to 10 seeds in each cell. So it's just like that, or back and forth like that. And you'll get better at it as you go. You kind of get used to how many seeds are okay from each different kind of seed and how it's going to grow. And then the excess, put it right back in. Seal your package. Try to keep everything dry, clean, not muddy. And then you'll have seeds for next year, because seed does keep a lot longer than people think. Most people think. And yeah, it's good to have some for next year. Seed's expensive, right? So that's tarragon. So now we have our seeds in, and we're going to put a second layer just to tuck it into bed for the night. And we're just going to make a really fine layer of the dry substrate, the dry seed starting mix on top of this, because we don't want to bury it too heavily, because you have teeny tiny seeds trying to come up here. So that's why I use the dry, because if it's wet, it'll clump and you'll get a big clump on each cell, and that's not what we're going for. It's a really small seed, so we don't want it in there. But at the same time, you do have to cover it. You think, oh, the seed's so tiny, I'll just throw it on there and water it and it'll find its way down. No, it needs the whole seed to be covered so that the water surrounds the whole seed, the substrate surrounds the whole seed, and the darkness helps too. So the seeds use something called phototropism, so they'll sense the light. Even being covered, they'll still sense the warmth and the light, and they'll send their sprouts up and they'll send their roots down. And that's the magic of seeds. They have that intelligence inside of them to do that, and they use that energy to do that. They have what some people have coined, a seed is a baby in a box with its lunch, and each seed is a different variation of that. Sometimes the baby in the box has already eaten its lunch, sometimes the baby in the box is in the process of eating its lunch, sometimes the baby in the box is waiting and it's not eating it yet until it's germinating, and then sometimes there's more than one baby in the box. So there's all different kinds of scenarios. Seeds are amazing, they're fascinating, they're so biodiverse, and it keeps me completely enthralled. Even when I'm not gardening, I'm always thinking about seeds. So that's the magic there. So we'll wait for this one to come up and show you off what it's going to do.
Okay, go for it now. I'm just giving it some more water.
So that's the basics of seed starting for what I know. I don't know everything. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are in the greenhouse industry that can tell you a lot more of the intricacies of that, but that's just the bare minimum basics of how I do it. There's all different kinds of cells you can use. You can use recycled trays like this. They're a little bit different shapes, slightly different depths, more holes on the bottom. It just depends what you like to use or what you have available to you. By all means, please recycle plastic, right? Like we're trying to keep it from getting in the landfill. There are these type of trays that if you want to put something else in there, it will hold your seedlings nicely. We're going to talk about these little peat pots in the next video, so that's what we're going to use these for. But I wanted to talk about your labeling. So everybody has these fancy labelers that you can buy for really expensive, but if you're doing a whole bunch of seedlings, especially if you're growing them like me for sale, you're going to want to have a cheap way or an expensive way of labeling your trays, labeling even cells in your trays. So what I'm planning to do with these 72s, for example, is do a different variety of tomatoes per row, and I go it like this way. So each one is going to have a different stick labeling each row, or you could do 2 at a time, whatever you want to do, right? But it's very important to label them. And what I found is really inexpensive is just to get coffee sticks. You get these little coffee stir sticks from the dollar store or wherever, and they're so much cheaper, and you can recycle them, you can chuck them out, whatever, and it's not as expensive as getting the fancy sticks from the nursery. You can also use popsicle sticks from a craft store or from a dollar store, whatever you like. And then always remember when you go to put the seedlings in your garden, make sure you put something that's gonna last. The sun and water are really good at erasing your Sharpie, erasing your magic marker. So you can buy really fancy markers that are specifically for garden. I just found that they're not that much better than a Sharpie, so I just stick to Sharpies. But make sure you get something durable to write them on. Maybe you can try spraying them with something. I wouldn't advise that. I do mostly organic. But you can try spraying them with something to lock in the Sharpie so it won't wash off. So join us in the next video. I'm gonna talk about the difference between seeding your seedlings and these little guys. These are peat pellet or peat pots, I believe they're called. I don't really even know the name brand because I just bought them kind of loose. But we're gonna see the difference between growing them in trays like that or in these little guys. And join us in the next video and you'll see what that's all about. Thanks.